regrets the positive vigilante justice?
Before we start, my voice can barely be heard. So please don't make a lot of noise because I can't virtually speak loud. Thank you very much.
Have you got water and things like that?
Yeah, I know, it's just really bad cold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also on our side, we would ask people if they like what we're saying, not to clap or make any noise, because there is this Romanian habit of banging the.
Yeah, we could.
This is the first time we would like not to that.
Right then. So without further ado, we will start straight into the debate and invite the first speaker from the first session to open the debate.
Doesn't always have tangible consequences to real world. This still doesn't mean that it's not something to be regretted. On our side of the house, we say that portraying vigilante justice in a favorable light is something that affects the society in a very tangible and explicit way. However, we say that this is still a bad concept.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
They claim that Gotham is every city in the universe. But what they forget is that we live in the real world. And in the real world, we don't have Batman as the standard of good. We have pirates in Somalia that are beating up innocent people, and they are vigilantes. We have fighters against the ISIS movement, and although they are fighters against ISIS, in their free time they also beat up other people that they perceive to be somehow affiliated with ISIS without due process. We say that those are the people that we are talking about nowadays. Not Batman, not those quirky characters that frankly do not exist in the real world, but actual people that commit actual infractions, and this is exactly what those are, infractions. And this motion should not have been about superheroes and about how we find the standard for morality. Because what is happening in reality is that you give movies to the masses. And just because you're looking at the movie, this is not going to make you politically active. You go to enjoy yourself and how hot Scarlett Johansson is, or how beautiful the other actors are. Do not become politically active because of a movie, and that's why we take this debate, because what we are doing is positive. Because if we didn't have that, we would have a more reasonable standard in our society. But what they are claiming is that because of this positive standard, people are becoming more politically active. I'm sorry, but this does not happen in the real world, and we cannot start my own inspiration. To take arms, and we have to glorify these vigilantes because otherwise people won't be incentivized. But she does not understand the nuances of the real world. Because when you glorify people, when you glorify these kind of gangs, you basically glorify everything they are doing. So when they take action against black gangs that are maybe committing violence in their areas, the people that they are fighting black people and they are fighting violence, they see them as heroes, and the fact that they were targeting black people is only incidental. And that is a problem because you give a skewed perception of reality. You give those people excuses, and people, when they see vigilantes, they tend to rather legitimize their actions and legitimize what they are doing and not look at the complete facts. Because that is what they're seeing in the media. The thing that they do is they are beating people that perceive, that are seen as a threat, but they are just beating people that are being evil, and that is simply wrong. So entering the first point, no thank you, about vigilantism. And they have told us that vigilantes have disrespect of the unjust laws and for the system. But the problem is, to whom are those laws unjust? Because I'm going to treat two separate cases, when the laws are indeed unjust and when they are only perceived as being unjust. The problem when we have unjust laws is that the solution is not to act selfishly and take the matter into your own hands. Because when you are being violent and you are being disconnected, you do not improve those slightly. But what those positive portrayals are doing, and basically this glorification is saying that you should take always matter into your own hands, disregard the society, and just make it better for you and your family, and we do not agree with that perception. No. But second of all, what if those are unjust at all? What if the problem is simply that you do not perceive those laws as being just, and they are? The problem is that when you all take your matter into your own hands, you do not commit a moral act, because an act is only moral, it can become a norm. So everybody will feel like that is why these actions are not the day, or you lack accountability and you lack structural reform. So because we want the systems of checks and balances, and because you're not uplifting no offense to the society, we believe that at the end of the day, we do not stand to this glorification, because this is exactly what it's proposing. Selfish individuals that take their matters into their own hands. Now entering the second point about whether it is okay to empathize with vigilantes. And they have told us that we have to educate people on some values, and that's why they oversimplified it. And we have identified multiple problems with this. First of all, it was defined extensions when you explained to you that it's disrespectful to the police authority, because when you look at those movies and when you read the comic, you don't understand the structural issues in our country, because that is just the recipe, and that is just an oversimplification in general. You have structural problems that differ from city to city, and just because you provide people with a comic, this is not going to enforce them to become politically active and to actually change the problem in their countries. The fact is that, exactly as I was telling you, in those comics books, they don't even focus that much on police. They want to sell the comics, and they want to highlight the masculinity and the power and the awesomeness of those superheroes, and they can only do that if they disrespect the police and if they put the police in a lower light. And that is detrimental at the end of the day. Yes, Yanko.
How can you state in the same time that people are going to make revolutions and fight against the state, but they won't get a moral compass or a tool of overcoming the poor context out of this motion?
We never claimed that. We just told you that it's not reasonable to tell people that they should be selfish and that's the way it should act, because we do not stand with this principle. We believe that the law is equal to all, and if you tell people that they should act differently in each context, you're all the law, and no thank you. And at the end of the day, if you just shape the law from however you want, you're not going to uplift the society in any means. And entering my last point, that's why you oversimplify. At the end of the day, is that the end simply do not justify the means. The issue is not as simple as Boyka makes it out to be. You don't have, even if you have some vigilantes that, this does not mean that it all the harm seriously. And that's what we regret from their side, because they come to us and claim that they will be talking in nuance about this issue, then they come and tell us about how every city is like Gotham, how every vigilante is quirky and is fun like Ryan Reynolds, and that is simply not the reality. We regret their simplistic portrayal, and we tell you that at the end of the day, vigilantism is an issue that they complicated. For that
Structurally for authority.
Well, we say that if you want to incentivize people to rise up by using movies, you are not going to achieve that. If you really want to incentivize structural reforms, you call for national dialogue, you call for national discussions, you just don't expect people to watch Batman and then try to be politically active. So at the end of the day, what I was telling you is that because the government, because their vigilantism is a really complicated issue, we do not stand for it being glorified in any way. We say that this is just as disrespectful as it is to the victims that vigilantism has caused. We don't mean that people forget about the victims, but we say just disrespectful to say that in those situations it is okay for vigilantism to always fight, and the victims always are the ones that are to blame and they were never innocent. We say that this creates a dangerous mentality in our society, and we do not stand today because they grossly simplified everything that we have been telling you. And because vigilantism is a really complex issue and you cannot paint it in black or white, but we'd rather prefer that we do not simplify it at all in the media, we see that definitely have to go for government.
Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, it is funny that by the end of this debate, people are going to glorify the pirates of Somalia and people acting in this kind of infractional context, but get good moral principles and good tool of overcomer context out of this motion. We believe that the whole purpose of assessing this motion stands in two things. Firstly, if we both think that we can agree that they are actually going to get some things out of it, and we must assess our wrong systems. are actually morally good principles, even though they do not identify with the rhetoric of the state. We believe that by the end of this debate, this is why we should assess, why we shall have to assess, and this is why we have 3 points I'm going to talk about: vigilantes, morality, and overcoming conflicts. First point about vigilantes, and we believe that their whole portrayal was unrealistic. Why? Because people tend to like good heroes. This is why they tend to pay for good heroes, because they will want to identify themselves with the idea of being the good guy. They always want the good, they always like the good guys in the movies. So this is why at the point that they are watching the movie, they are going to be the supporter of the good guy. They are going to want the good guy to win from this perspective. At that point, we can actually see that their whole portrayal of getting bad values out of it does fall by the end of this debate. But now let's talk about equality. And their whole problem on the first argument was that the context is arbitrary. But I have 2 answers to that. Firstly, we believe that the context is not arbitrary, exactly because the state actually punishes and discriminates certain categories more than others, and the actions of the vigilantes only come in a response from this, putting the equality back. And in society does not see right when the politician gets the same punishment as a person that has been stealing because he was starving. At that point, the society believes that the moral principle behind that law is wrong, and it empowers a superhero to act from the moral perspective. This is moral by the end of this debate, and even if it's not, it's the society's will. So the good portrayal of this kind of superheroes is not wrong from the moral point of view.
The thing is that you have to defend positive portrayal, not in general movies about vigilante.
Okay, and the positive portrayal makes me empathize with that superhero, so I get my values out of the actions of that superhero. If the actions of that superhero are intrinsically moral by the end of this debate, because they do morally good things for the society, then the good portrayal actually achieves this effect. But let's talk about authority. And their whole problem is that we lack respect for the authority, and we believe that's intrinsically a good thing. Why? Because we shall be taught to fight against authority, but more than that, we shall be taught to question the authority. Not questioning the authority and blindly trusting the law, blindly trusting everything that the state gives us is intrinsically wrong by the end of the debate. But more than that, we believe that the citizen is more fit for the society at the moment he does not respect the actual law, but the principle behind that law. At the moment a superhero comes and says, okay, the majority of the laws have a good principles behind their back, I'm going to respect it, but that specific law has no moral principle, like it just the moral principle behind that law and act towards that moral principle. This is beneficial by the end of this debate. Let's talk about their expansion and their respect for police. And we believe that firstly, no citizens want to disrespect from this, but rather question if the police is always right in what she's doing. And realistically speaking, it's not. But what comes from these comics is that the society is only questioning the actions of the police equal at the moment. And about this idea of effect, we believe that by the end of this debate, we have proved that the effect on the society are rather on our side of the house, because they gave the right principles to the society. Let's talk about morality and ignorance. And we believe that their whole problem with the second argument was that these comics are overly simplified. And we believe that can be inherently good. Why? Because you have to transmit good moral values to the masses. In order to do that, you have to simplify the process and romanticize him and make him attractable to the society, so the society would like him and would enjoy watching the movie in order to get those values. At the moment, the good superhero is nice and doing nice things and has a good portrayal out of it, population is going to follow him and watch his values and going to assess his values as being good. We believe that getting this kind of society is actually making a right society in which people actually understand what's behind the laws. But let's talk more about awareness. And we believe that the assessing of emotion when he has regret in his wording is whether we shall go back in time and do the other way around. We believe that at the moment we would have done the other way around, we wouldn't have get these kind of good values out of this kind of comics. We believe that at the moment this kind of comics have been positively portrayed. It has raised awareness towards the society, and it has given visibility towards the society in order for the society to understand what's behind them.
First of all, you tell us that these things are being oversimplified to sell to the masses, and then they tell us that they are going to question the morals behind the law. Those things are not compatible.
No, they are going to question the punishment for thief, let's say. At the moment they are going to see that in the society the punishment for stealing something is not always equal. At that point that's a good thing because they question a simply law from the society's way of working, and that's an intrinsically good thing. More than that, we believe that their whole portrayal of people that are beating black people or in society is so unrealistic. Why? Because inherently these kind of superheroes are doing things that are better for this kind of discriminated population. They help old people, they help discriminated people, they help people that are racially discriminated. We believe that these kind of things are actually beneficial, and their whole portrayal was unrealistic both in society and in this kind of comics, because that's not the way in which things actually work in this kind of movies. Third point about overcoming context. And what Moika has explained you today is that at the moment these kind of films actually have an artistic value, I'm going to get hope out of them. I'm going to see that the context in which, I don't know, a superhero was born to be alike with mine. And at that moment we are actually going to get a hope for the population. Of course that hope wouldn't gain an advantage in the whole cases, when we believe that this kind of analysis is much more reasonable. I think that the people will actually empathize. Between our of this debate, we have explained to you how the population is going to get something out of this, how the population is going to empathize and see that you were born in a neighborhood that's poor. You can overcome your condition by doing good things to the other, by helping the society, by giving the society the benefit that the state is not able to give. We believe that this is why we stand for the end of this debate. This is why by the end of this debate the opposition wins. So through vigilance point, for which I told you that their argument was only was saying actually nothing, because we don't have a problem with the people question the authority. Secondly, because show how beneficial to the society when it's compared to a true moral compass, and because we give a hope to that population, I have never been so proud to oppose.
Thank you very much. I invite the back to the reply speech so that we can conclude that case.
3 points in my report. First of all, let's see what the motion was really about. Second of all, the practical implications. And third of all, morality. First of all, let's start with what the motion was about. Because if Team Government wants to talk about pirates of Somalia and wants us to define them, well, I shouldn't have walked in this debate in order to lose the debate, right? I can't go and defend violent groups that have racist behavior, neither their glorification, neither their existence. We can't do that. We believe that the pirates of Somalia, we have Batman is part of the pop culture. No, pirates of Somalia are not. All that analysis on that part falls. Second, on practical implication, right? At last, you believe that we can go back and forth saying we don't believe you and we don't believe you, and that's not a debate, right? If we were to take us, we would know what they said to their inspiration. We don't believe you that people are it's not providing real answers. Disrespect for the police, to which they brought practical implication, to which they said that a certain level of practical implication, we actually brought to rebuttal. We said that the police is not necessarily an authority. We trust your analysis in which we showed you that this world doesn't necessarily are bad, and in which way are bad, and in which way useless. And this is why people tend to believe what happens in comic books. Because it is real, because they need it in real life, and because it's not fantasy, as I said many times before. Now on morality. Because what they said was, regardless of the practical implication, we have to prove that intrinsically respect for authority is good, and disrespecting authority is bad because the government is good. What they said was, people act for selfish reasons. To that, we answered, yes, the government has also made them selfish people. The world is made of selfish people that protect their own interests. The question isn't about when we are subjective, when we have that principle.
said in this debate we never thought of actually proving that Batman doesn't lead to civil disobedience, doesn't lead to people being socially conscious. Because it's pretty obvious, it's pretty common sense. We had civil disobedience before Batman existed. We had civil disobedience since the existence of the first political system. When people are not content with the authority, they tend to question the authority, they start to question the authority, and this is a natural phenomenon that happens. The fact that we have vigilante movies about vigilantes that are glorified doesn't necessarily lead to this outcome. It simply enhances this outcome a little bit, but it certainly doesn't lead to all the effects they're claiming. But they accuse us that because we're claiming that the effects don't happen, our practical effects don't happen either. No. Firstly, we tell you that the effects we're claiming are much more reasonable. They're not so dramatic, right? They claim absolutely dramatic effects, such as questioning authority, in general asking for reforms, and so on. Whereas we show you that given the fact that we already have an existing idea of not trusting the police and not cooperating with the police, what happens if you further enforce this pattern? Not necessarily that people are no longer going to cooperate with the police, but it's simply unfair that you demonize a person that does his job. It's simply unfair that you leave out a person that does his job and that chooses to receive some praise. Furthermore, our argument works as an even if movies would have that much of an impact on individuals, we say that the effects that could be claimed are not the effects but our effects of people questioning the authority without any mistake. And this is fairly problematic for a number of reasons. So this leads me to my case. Essentially, in our case, we have presented you a number of systemic reasons for why journalism is wrong and lacks accountability. The only response we got to this argument came in the first speech. He told us that the journalism is sometimes fine because it helps spur reform. Fine, but this doesn't prove their side of the motion. Their side of the motion should have defended movies with vigilantist behavior that is glorified, not vigilantist movies. We say that the exact same effects can, if they happen, can come from this in which they are not glorified, in which you don't glorify and overly simplify the hero that is a vigilante. Furthermore, the only response we got is that we need these movies to be simple, because apparently we don't not understand otherwise. But in my first speech of first talk, I have shown you there are a lot of instances in which movies don't overly simplify this dynamic, in which movies show that vigilante groups can have bad behaviors as well. And why is it so important on our side that movies are nuanced and that movies don't lead to overly simplification? Exactly because we don't want to glorify that concept, the concept that there is suffering in the world. We don't say that the suffering in the world is happening because of movies. Nobody is beating black people, or nobody is doing piracy or whatever because they've seen movies about it, but rather you trivialize the real world by showing that vigilantism in general is fine. And this is disrespectful towards victims in general, because you show them that they are simply collateral damage in a greater fight between good and evil. This is simply disrespectful towards victims, simply demeaning towards them, and this is a simple and very simplistic approach towards understanding the world. And all this is because on our side, we're the right side of the principle, and we're simply more reasonable and pretty probable.
Și bateria și tot asta. Stai, mă.
Unde le pun la Orco?
Le duci la Petrina, în Orco mai greu.
Ok.
Eu trebuie să iau...
Bă, Teo, Andrada, veniți puțin, mă. Ce scrie aici?
Network is not smooth, please try again.
Ok. Bă, da, auzi?
Cred că filmează.
wydaje. Live jest.
You fucked up. Są formrande. N-am ce să-i fac, it's closing.